Hello, 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 everyone. Hi, how's everybody doing? It's Wednesday, June 2nd, and I am super excited to have another edition of Get to Know the Candidate. I have been hosting a series of conversations with different candidates for office for us to get to know them, see what their platforms are about, how their positions align with our values, and also how their office is going to be, affecting our everyday lives. So today, I'm super excited to have a guest that is actually I never get to interview people from Long Beach. So big shout out to the Long Beach people. And today I'm super excited to host Josh Lowenthal, who is an entrepreneur, a dad, all things for former educator. So he's gonna tell us more about who he is and what he does in just a minute when he join us. Please have your questions ready, and of course, sometimes I get to ask all of your questions, and sometimes I don't, and that's fine. The conversation always continues on social media. So for me, it's also important that we get to build relationships with decision makers and elected officials, especially my followers and my community here. So I'm waiting for Josh to join us on Instagram so that we can start the stream. And I just sent him an invite. But please, if you're tuning in, let me know where you're tuning in from, where you watching this live stream, and how are you doing? How was the holiday weekend? We just had a few days, off. So it'll be exciting to also hear from you guys and see what you were up to. So where are you tuning in from, and what did you do in the holiday weekend? So let me know. Josh is telling me that you're unable to join. I don't know why. Let's see, I'm gonna try again. Josh. Ooh. I think also if you go to my profile, and if you go, like, if you're gonna watch my stories, you can kind of join in. So thank you everyone for bearing with us. And if you are watching this live stream from Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, you can simply type your questions and your comments and your suggestions in the comment box. If you're here on Instagram, you can join us via, just on the comments too. So it'll be easy. Let's see. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Josh, if you go to my profile, I think you might be able to join that way. No? Doesn't let you? Technical difficulties, you guys. Really, not even when you go to my profile. Are you following me? Maybe that might be an issue. Yeah, I keep saying that you can't join. Weird. Huh. All right. Let's see. I'm going to try this one more time. Okay, let's see. I wonder if it's because if you don't follow me or from me, I don't know. Can anybody help? Does anybody knows what's going on? How do you enter Instagram live? You go into somebody's profile and join. What? Okay, let's see. I think we're troubleshooting on the back end, guys. You cannot see it, but we're making it happen here. So okay, so elections. Did everybody here in California got their ballot? Did you get your ballot? Put a little heart in the comments and let me know if you got your ballot. And if you are all set to go, anybody organizing fun parties to, fill out your ballot and send it, to folks. So let's do it. Okay, we're in. I think we're in. Hold on. Let me try again. Okay, boom. I just invited you again. So yeah, June 7th, guys. Tuesday, June 7th is the day. So please don't wait. I'm getting a little video together, to guide you guys through the process. whatever you decide to do is fine. Do it, at least do it, and get to vote and get involved. That's the most important thing. If you have a candidate that you love, you can help them this weekend. Go walk with them. Door knock is awesome. It's like my favorite thing to do when I ran for office. That was my favorite. But you can make phone calls. You can, share with your community on social media and a lot more. So let's see. Oh, hey, Thomas. Hey, Andrea. Welcome. Let's see. I'm trying to get Josh, our special guest here, to join us. So, okay. I feel like it's coming. Oh, okay. Questions. Oh, no, Thomas, I'm not taking other requests. So if you go on my profile, if you look for Aura Vasquez official, and in my profile, on the little top left, there's a little circle. And that way you can watch my live stream. And that way I can also see you and pull you in. So that would be good. Hi, Fabian. Hi, Unlimited. Welcome. I'm waiting for our special guest, Josh Lowenthal, to join us and so that we can have a conversation with him. What kind of questions you have ready? I think this is the first time I interview somebody from Long Beach. So I hope this is not I hope this is not the last time that I get to interview candidates from Long Beach. Please hit me up. I would love to have you guys join. So let's see. Ooh, so many people. It keeps saying that you cannot join for some weird reason, Josh. I want to maybe let me close this Instagram and open it back again. Okay, let's see. View requests. View requests. Okay, boom. It's not Josh, but we get Josh in here in just a second. Yes, there we go. I just accepted you. Okay, there you go. All right. All right, guys. I'm lowering my volume so you guys don't get any echo. If you can hear me, clap once. No, I'm kidding, guys. Hi. If you can lower your volume all the way, it would be great. And I also don't have any. There you go. I think you got to move your camera the other way. There we go. No, now you're upside down. You're almost there. Yes. Okay, guys, let's do this. Josh Lowenthal in the house.
Okay, you got me?
Josh, let me tell you, part of being in the political realm is dealing with all this technical stuff and social media.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect.
Wonderful.
How are you? Thank you for joining us, and thank you for bearing with all this technical stuff.
Well, thank you for having me, Aura. I really appreciate everything you do, actually. I certainly am grateful for the activism. I'm even more grateful for the way that you keep our community informed of things that are going on, and you challenge us all to ask questions, to be, expecting the most out of our elected officials on every opportunity, and to hold people accountable in the public sector and the private sector. We're all stakeholders, and those who intend to lead, really need to be held accountable. So I appreciate everything you do.
I appreciate you too, because it takes so much courage to run for office. And you and I actually share something very special, because we both also ran in 2020. And even though we didn't get where we wanted to be, I feel that I learned so much. I'm sure you also can relate to this, that you also learned so much. And there's a lot of questions that I want to ask you. I have a few questions, and I invite people in the audience to also ask their questions. But for
Right.
people that don't know you and for people that don't know much about you, would you please introduce yourself to to the broader community here and share with us who you are?
Yeah. Well, my name is Josh Lowenthal. I'm born and raised in the community of Long Beach. Very proud to be from the LBC, as we call it. I grew up in this town. I went to public schools here. I did live abroad growing up in Mexico for a few years, and later in Spain, and that was a wonderful, wonderful gift for my parents. I became a fluent Spanish speaker, but it also gave me a global perspective and a really, different point of view that I've carried with me for my entire life. After finishing public school in Long Beach, I went to college on the East Coast, and then I came back to Long Beach, and I was a school teacher here. I taught high school history and government, almost exclusively to what were then called ELD students, but these were immigrant students who English was their second language, and that was an unbelievable experience. We can talk more about that just in a bit. I knew that I would be going off to graduate school. I spent some time in the Middle East. I volunteered in the Israeli army for a brief period of time. Then went to graduate school for international affairs and began a career in international telecommunications. And that was, sort of the foundation of my career. I spent 25 years working in business, but also staying very active in my community. I love my community. I didn't run in the 2020 cycle. I actually ran in the 2018 cycle. And that was right after Trump was elected. There were many of us who felt extremely invigorated and excited to do something about it, to actually get out and make change. And I went next door to Orange County to be part of the Blue Wave and changing the culture and getting Democrats elected in Orange County. We had a wild congressman named Dana Rohrabacher, who was completely and totally up to lunch. We had an assembly member named Travis Allen, who was having skinheads show up at his rallies. This is literally in the district, right next door to Long Beach. And with Trump being elected, there was, this type of behavior was completely emboldened. And it was important for people to go out and do something about it. And so people like myself, Harley Ruda, Tom Umberg, Cotty Petrie Norris, many others, actually, we were all first timers. Tom Umberg wasn't, but the rest of us completely first timers, and went out to make change. And it was a wild experience.
Wow. I know it's like sometimes we have an idea of who people are, and it's always so great to hear from themselves what is, like their personal story. So this is going to be your second run, and what do you think is going to be different, and why are you running again? I mean, as someone that runs, it almost gives me PTSD to think about running again. I'm always like, okay, I want to do it. No, I can't. So tell us, why are you running, and what have you overcome? Or maybe why are you excited about, running again?
Well, great question. First of all, I come from a family of service, so I've been around it for the last 30 years. My dad started off as an activist in Long Beach, and my mom, as a matter of fact. And I used to come home from school, and there would be meetings going on in our living room about various topics: police reform, environmental causes, human rights, so on and so forth. And so I was sort of used to that activism. My dad first ran for city council, unseated a 16-year incumbent, and he did that just walking the district. And it wasn't just about him sort of pitching his ideas, it was about him listening, really understanding what the needs are of the community, understanding where people's pain points are, understanding where people felt that they weren't being heard. And so he went on to a career in the city council, later in the state assembly, the state senate, and now, of course, he's a sitting member of Congress and has been in Congress for the last 10 years, although he has chosen to retire. My mom served on the school board. the Long Beach City Council, the state legislature, and continues to serve right now. In her 80s, actually, is on the Harbor Commission of Long Beach, overseeing the port, largest port in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And my only sibling is a judge, actually. So I'm the only member of the family that actually has not been elected, and I've been working diligently on their campaigns. I've been, accustomed to campaign life for the last 30 years. And I was also involved in student government myself. I was the president of the student body at Cornell University as an undergrad, and very active in politics on that level. And that's a community of 20,000 people. So that was quite something. I cut my teeth on that as well. To answer your question, in 2018, it was about overcoming this sort of red wave that had taken place, and all of us sort of sitting back and waiting after the dust settled. It was like, well, what are we doing about this, right? And in that process, I really learned how much I really love policy and really want to make a difference, in any which way, shape, or form that I could. I decided not to run again in the 2020 cycle. But as we went through redistricting and the changes around redistricting in this 2022 cycle, and the boundaries changed, and I have been back in my hometown of Long Beach, there was an opportunity as the assembly member, Patrick O'Donnell, decided not to run for re-election. And that was a wonderful opening for me. So I seized it. I'm very excited to be doing this. The district is completely different now. This is a blue district.
Yeah, tell us about the district, because for folks that are watching and they maybe don't know much about Long Beach, tell us what are the different areas and what are your people about?
Well, it's interesting. So when I was growing up in Long Beach in the 70s and the 80s, Long Beach was a blue-collar town. There was a naval shipyard was there. It was a manufacturing town, as a matter of fact, multi-generational town. And it was a Republican town. As a matter of fact, when my dad first won for assembly in 1998, he succeeded Steve Kuykendall, who was a Republican. Long Beach is not Santa Monica. It is not Berkeley. It is not as progressive as some of the other parts of this great state, but it has definitely moved blue, to the extent that in this race that I'm in right now, there are only 4 Democrats, not a Republican even filed. So it is certainly a safe and blue district. And so very, very different than my experience in 2018, just a few miles down the road.
Yeah. And what's like the ethnic, makeup? What is the demographics like in your district?
Well, it's a truly diverse community. And by the way, the district is not only Long Beach, it also includes East Carson. That was part of the redistricting process. The district prior to that included San Pedro. And of course, that changed in late December with redistricting. And, Carson's a wonderful community, incredible community, and diverse community. So the district as a whole, which is Long Beach, East Carson, Signal Hill, and Catalina Island, is 35% Latino, 35% white, 15% African American, and 15% API, Asian Pacific Islander.
Pretty diverse.
And the API communities are actually really interesting. There's a huge Cambodian community in Long Beach, which for a time was the largest diaspora concentrated in one area outside of Cambodia, many of whom were refugees. And it also includes a very sizable Filipino population. I'd love to be able to, speak about the Filipino population and what heroes they have been in the pandemic. And also includes a nice sized Pacific Islander Samoan population as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just the Long Beach area. So that's good. So for whoever is out there, be on the lookout, vote. And what district number is it?
69.
59. Okay, I like that number.
69.
That's a good number. Well, okay. So another question that I like to ask you is, what are some of the things that you want to move forward and as assembly member, and at the same time, if you can educate maybe some of the viewers that might not even know what an assembly member does. I mean, every time I have these conversations, I ask the candidates to explain in their own words, you know, what's going to be their job, what's their job description, and what do they want to do in that job. Because I feel like there is so many people that, at least in my online community, that are not very in tune with politics. And
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to be able to kind of bring them more in and get them more involved. So please educate us on
Yeah,
what's an assembly member
let's start with the
and what do you
basics of
want to do when you become an assembly member.
let's start with the basics of what the California State Assembly is. So in the federal government, we have the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. In state government, we have the exact same thing. So in the legislative branch federally, you have the House of Representatives, the Senate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the state government, you have the state Senate and the state Assembly. So it's effectively the House of Representatives of the state of California that creates the laws and administers the budget of the state of California. Now, California is the 5th largest economy of the world by itself. Larger than Great Britain, larger than France, certainly much larger than Canada or Russia for all the attention that it's getting right now. It is remarkable, you know, what we have in this state and how much we drive, as a matter of fact. The budget is roughly, you know, in the neighborhood of $400 billion annually. 60% of that roughly is spent on public education, and administers the laws. And most of the laws that we follow on a daily basis have to do with, are created in the state of California. So it really affects our lives on a massive scale. Though to your earlier point, Aura, it is remarkable how few people really understand, you know, the power that takes place in the state legislature.
Mm-hmm.
It really is massive. The district itself is around 500,000 people, so it's quite sizable, as a matter of fact. And terms are 2 years. So, and there are 6 terms that can be held with term limits. You can hold 12 years in the legislature, combined with the Assembly and the Senate.
Wow, incredible. So what are some of the things that you want to champion at the assembly when you get there? Or what are like your vision or your main issues or your platform? I think we hear all these terms interchangeably when people run for office.
Yeah, really great question. And they do change, right? Because they're dynamic, number one. Number two, you really, you know, I certainly believe that it's important to reflect the needs and priorities of the people in the community. And those is not necessarily people who have the exact same point of view as I do. You know, the job is to represent everyone across the spectrum and all of their needs. So let's talk about a few of them. You know, in this district, you have the goods movement industry, right? You have the ports and the 710 freeway and all the things running in and out. That means that represents a massive amount of industry that the entire country and to some degree the global economy is relying upon. When that stops, as we saw, you know, for example, when we had all the ships on the horizon, we have all the issues right now, backordered things that so many of us experience right now, you know, stemming from the pandemic, there are global economic implications associated with that, right? So many of the people that live in this community are tied to the things at the port. Some of them are directly tied to it in as much as they work at the port, or they work in trucking or transportation services, or member of the Longshoremen Union. And some of them are impacted by it in as much as the effects of the port, which has some of the worst air quality in the United States, as a matter of fact, which has diesel particulates and others that negatively impact people of all ages, and particularly children, where we see higher rates of asthma and illness than you do anywhere else. And listen, people died in the pandemic because of where they lived in proximity to these areas. It also includes, by the way, the oil refineries. So the Marathon Oil Refinery in East Carson, as a matter of fact. And so, and, you know, and I will have to be candid with you, you know, we have to look at all these issues holistically, because we have a local economy that is reliant upon these things as well. You know, the people working those oil refineries are earning, very high salaries compared to other types of jobs, certainly compared to green jobs. And so, how do we reconcile those things? Because there are broader macroeconomic effects rippling through our community when we just take those away. And what are the ancillary impacts of that? Then you have crime, potentially more homelessness, things around that. So it's vitally important that we don't just lead with ideology, but we actually take a practical view at solving some of these issues. So I'd say, in terms of the needs of the district, that's going to be, number one. In terms of what people in the community are talking about, much like they're talking about throughout the state, and dare I say throughout the country, it's the issue of homelessness. And this is a very, very complex issue. I know that you've addressed it in detail on your show. Excuse me. And we just simply do not have the infrastructure right now to handle what is happening. And, I'm speaking of the chronically homeless, not, and we just need to completely and totally change our approach. And there is not going to be an easy fix there. There's going to be a long-term investment that we're going to have to make in that regard. So I would say that that's vitally important. Public education, deeply concerned. I'm a dad, as you mentioned earlier. I have 3 girls that are in public schools in 6th, 4th, and 2nd grade right now in this community. And, I want to certainly make sure that their education as a stakeholder is on par with, the rest of the world, the rest of the country, and making sure that we're not, and if California is leading, this country economically and so forth, we should be leading educationally as well. And so that's something that's paramount to me. One other issue that's really important to me is on a personal level that I would really like to work on in the legislature is the issue of digital privacy, which for, very germane to us here on Instagram Live. Of course, everything that we're putting on here right now is not owned by us. It's owned by them. We do not have any of the rights to those whatsoever. We've given that away. For whatever reason, whoever is the artist and the beautiful painting behind you, Aura, holds on to the rights of that art, but anything that we do in the digital world is not ours. And so we have the technology, if you follow the world of NFTs or what's happening right now with
the blockchain and such.
Right. That's right. And the imaging that's taking place right now, for example, of NCAA athletes and how they're able to be compensated by that. Well, I fundamentally believe in consumer rights. And I think that consumers should have intellectual property over their own digital footprint, whether they want to participate in that monetarily or otherwise. They should have that option. And I also think that it's incomprehensible to me why something goes out into the digital ether. We have no ability to pull it back. That's wrong. We should have those rights. The technology exists for that. There are other critical issues that are facing our state that need to be addressed, of course, and we should talk about those as well, Aura. We should talk about reproductive justice. We should be talking about
healthcare.
And environmental protection, water, so on and so forth. There's no lack of issues that are not going to be addressed over the next 10 years. And dare I say, it is quite possible that we do all of these things in a down economy. And tightening the belt, presents its own set of challenges as well. And we need to be prepared for that if that is indeed the case.
Yeah, absolutely. One issue that that I think is intersectional with all of the tech and the privacy, especially with social media, is a lot of us women that are in the public, kind of in this spectrum, we've seen more growing bullying, or like what they call cyberbullying, or they make things up and they make movies about you and they put them out there, and there's no real mechanism to hold anybody accountable. We have places like 4chan where it's like completely anonymous and people hide behind freedom of speech, to, make racial slurs and sexual, comments about, a lot of us, like I said, that I'm in the public eye. And I don't know really how to one can address something like that. But I also see it in our young people. We every day we hear a new person that have committed suicide because they were maybe talking to some stranger online, and or they were bullied online by anonymous people that make, profiles. So I hope that you get to maybe address some of this. I don't know what your thoughts are about this. This is something that a lot of other, former candidates like myself
Yeah.
and other women that are in the political realm, like, we suffered a lot from this stuff. So what are your thoughts on this?
First of all, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, this is critically important for anyone who's believes in equality and believes in the feminist movement, that what you're saying is absolutely disproportionately affecting women. Not just women, by the way, but girls. I want to talk about that in a second as well, and the accountability associated with that, the impacts that are being made on girls. But we're going to address those things. We're going to have to address accountability. Accountability of what people do online. That goes all the way up to disinformation, as a matter of fact. And California is the place to do that. In California, we're not afraid to be bold. We take on things in this great state, and that may institutionally have been there, even globally around the world for some time, and we take it on, like gay marriage, for example. I mean, this is something, when I was growing up, it would have been unheard of to even think. It was common, encouraged, actually, to be able to make homophobic slurs. I go back and I see some of the films I used to enjoy when I was a teen growing up, and I cringe at some of the things that I used to see. As an example, well, California is not afraid to look at things and to ascertain whether or not, they have a place for us in the future, just because we've had them in the past. And I certainly think that, having accountability for the things that people put online is something that we're going to address. Disinformation is eroding the culture of this country. It's bad, right? Yeah. And there's no accountability associated with that right now. And so, this is not, there's some fights in the legislature, there's some issues that you take on that are 1-year fights, 2-year fights, and there's some that are 10-year or 20-year issues. And this is going to be a longer one, but I really believe that California is the right venue for this. I really do. Going back to the issue of bullying, there's something that's happened in my family with, bullying, as a matter of fact, that I worry about, and it's body image issues that affect girls, perpetuated in the internet. With no offense to you, Instagram, happening a lot, on Instagram and Facebook, and I think, everybody knows these need to be addressed. First of all, they need to be measured. We need to measure actually what the impacts are having on our youth, and that needs to be done in an objective way that all can agree upon. The same way that we did, back in the day for car safety and seat belts and so forth. And we figured out, okay, these cars are amazing, but we've got to make them safer for us all to use. Well, right now with the internet and children, we're not really measuring the impacts the way that we need to. We have companies, that are trying to take responsibility on their own regard, which I applaud them for, and creating parental controls and so forth. And I utilize those, but we still don't know the measured impacts of what is being digested and propagated online. I can tell you this. One of my daughters has been called fat and body shamed at school on multiple occasions. I believe that it is more and more challenging when kids are utilizing body shaming live. It's more challenging based on what kids are digesting online right now. And there's a cumulative effect associated with that. One of the things that I learned is that our school districts and public education do not have any curricula, do not have any policies associated with how to deal with these things.
Yeah, or measures of accountability. the real measure.
Yeah, and so I think that it's very appropriate for us to be able to deal with those types of things on the state level, and not necessarily to dictate what districts need to do, but to simply say to them, hey, you need to create policy around this. Please address it, right? Talk to your families, talk to your principals, have a dialogue, really get to know what the issues are and address those things. So I'm energized to work on those issues over the next decade.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you do. It is really so important in terms of body shaming and and cyberbullying and how it affects young people. I think this is a job that we all need to kind of take on, everyone in the community, families, parents. I mean, we see the growing hate and the polarization of communities also that believe one thing and maybe don't agree with others. And I think that I didn't grow up in that type of world. I grew up in a world where even when we disagree, we came to a place where we live harmoniously together,
Yeah.
But now we see people killing other people because,
Yeah.
How they look or who they are or their, their ethnicity or where they're from. And racism and white supremacy is something that, again, I didn't grow up, it wasn't present in
Well,
my face.
Honestly, and I think this dovetails to what I was talking about, I really believe that the internet and the lack of accountability is what's contributing to that. I do.
I agree. It's inflaming everything.
I don't think it's innate in us to have these types of divisions and the inability to communicate with each other. I just don't. As a matter of fact, you asked questions about me as a candidate. When I walk to everyone's house, even though Long Beach and this district is deep blue and there are no Republicans on the ballot. I walk to Republican households. I walk to decline to state households, to libertarian households. And one of the first things I often hear if I'm going door to door, a Republican home is, oh, you're a Democrat. I can't support a Democrat. My response to them is I know that you're a Republican, and that's why I'm here. We need to talk to each other. We need to listen to each other. I'm here to listen to you. If I win in this race, I'm going to be representing you, and I want you to have a seat at the table. We need to be able to find commonality in all the things that we, because at the end of the day, we all want a better community. That's what we're here for. I mean, we really do. We all love our children. We care about our kids. We want things better for the next generation. We may have different priorities or different ways of going about it. So we need to learn from each other and listen to each other. And everybody needs to have the humility to be able to do that, regardless of where you are on the spectrum. I believe that firmly. So I'm doing it. I hope others will join me. I hope other candidates take that approach. And it doesn't mean you lose your conviction. I'm not saying that. In the case of being a progressive, it doesn't mean you lose your compassion. It just simply means that what we have right now, the culture that we've landed upon right now is intolerable. And so we've got to do something about that.
Absolutely. Well, and to continue talking about how is life like in the campaign trail, and how difficult it is sometimes. What are some of the most challenging pieces for you personally about running for office? What has been like the challenging part in this time that is your second
personal, like you talk personally, or are you talking about?
I think both. Yeah, personally and because it's hard. Like when you're running, I try to tell people, it's really hard to separate your personal with your work, because you're also running because a lot of your values are on the table, and a lot of the things that are happening in the world, you maybe want to make them better or change them. So in a way, you're the candidate, but you're yourself, and those two people are one, but they get to take on different roles at different moments, And yes, I'm curious to hear, like, when I ran for office, in terms of the campaign trail, was for me as a first-time candidate completely hard to fundraise the amount of money that I wanted. So that was really hard. But at a personal level, was that it was really hard to navigate sharky waters. You have people that you love that are there for you, and you have people that you love that they're like, I can't do the politics. I love you, but I just can't. So it's hard to kind of divide both. But I'm curious to hear what are some of what has been like the most challenging part, or what are your challenges now that you're running for office?
Yeah, fundraising. Everything you're saying speaks to me, Aura, and it's this club of loneliness of candidates. As a matter of fact, what people
Yes.
don't necessarily understand is how lonely it actually is to be a candidate, because you don't know who's with you, who's not. And as my dad likes to say, if you stay around long enough, you give everybody a reason to hate you. But I think some of the things that you're talking about, like for me personally, are not as challenging. Some are more challenging. So, fundraising for me is not something that I'm afraid of. I believe we need comprehensive campaign finance reform. It is absolutely crazy that I spend 3 to 4 hours a day calling people and asking them for money. That's what I'm spending my time.
100%.
3 to 4 hours a day, every single day. So let's stop and think about that for a second, right? And there's no other way around it, because you're talking about marketing to 500,000 people, which means sending a mail, digital, text, staff, internet. I mean, the list goes on and on. You're building a marketing organization effectively is what you're doing to try and get your message out to voters. And if you don't do it, by the way, because of the world that we have in independent expenditures, right? There are interests out there that will do it and give their point of view of who they want.
Yeah.
And that's, so you got to rely upon the campaigns to do it themselves. When I ran in 2018, I raised $2.5 million for that state legislative race. I think it's from my background in business. I have very comfortable, sitting down with people and trying to do deals and make a pitch. So I'm very comfortable with that process. I'm cool with that. The tough thing, I think, right now is that people are disengaged in politics. And you made mention of that earlier. There is incredibly low voter turnout right now. We're going to have historic lows. Now, 2020, people were engaged in a presidential race, highly engaged in it, as a matter of fact. And that motivated a lot of people. Right now, we don't have anything like that. We don't really have a contentious governor's race or senators or things that are going on. There's nothing major that is drawing people to the polls. And what I feel, and I don't know how you feel about this, Aura, is that people are getting back to their post-COVID lives. That's taking a lot of energy and a lot of change, and their lives in some ways or some form have been affected dramatically from COVID. And they're focused on that. They're a little fatigued about focusing on the same old stuff. And so I feel there's a little less engagement in policymaking and politics right now, despite the fact that there's so many critical things going on.
Yeah.
So finding engagement right now, I think, is the biggest challenge as far as this election is concerned. I just find that for the most part, the electorate is asleep. Will they wake up for the fall? I'm really hoping they will. There's, like I said, there's just too much at stake for them not to.
Absolutely. And I also sense an apathy because people are so overburdened, overworked. We just went through this pandemic. Some of us did really well. Some other people really struggle with their mental health. And financially, some people lost their savings of their whole lives through their small businesses, and it's really sad. I also think that people are just tired of your everyday politician. They're tired of hearing they group all of us on the same group. It's like, oh, you're trying to run for office, you're like them. And I'm like, wait a minute, but 5 minutes ago I wasn't. So what happened? So I think people are really tired of the status quo and tired of being promised change and being promised that somebody's going to stand in their corner and fight with and for them, and not getting that. So I think that that's why also there is this sense that, I've been here before. I heard somebody else say this, and it's not changing. So we need to do a better job. There's another huge issue. We don't teach civics in a lot of our schools. Kids don't know.
Yeah, everybody needs to do a better job, Aura. So it's very simple to say, that lies in the hands of those who have been running for office and empty promises and so forth. But people need to also get more engaged. They need to get more involved in their communities. They have a role and a responsibility to do so. You're right. We're not teaching civics in school. We're not, doing as much as we can in that capacity. But we need to be doing a lot. We need to expect, I think we should expect more of the electorate. They need to, as stakeholders, be actively more involved. We need to give them better avenues for that. I don't think that the responsibility is just on elected officials. What are you going to do for me? No, it's what are we all going to do together? There's no voice that's more important, one voice more important than anybody else's in this community. It doesn't matter if you're elected or not.
Absolutely. And I see somebody on Twitch, making a comment saying, I throw those mailers in the trash, don't waste your money. And, this is another piece. And I hope that maybe at some point you can take this on in terms of campaign reform, the amount of, for the environment, the amount of mailers that you get. But how do you reach, how do you reach other type of, how do you reach your community without it? So, we have to rethink this whole way of elections. All of us have to rethink the way that we engage and the way that we do it. Unfortunately, for the regular voter out there, the only way sometimes that they find out about you is by getting those postcards or those, mailers or, the flyers that, send. But it really does pain my heart.
The amount of time we've spent in this conversation is about 5 times the amount of time the average voter spends on deciding how they're going to vote across all the races. And to your earlier point, not even understanding what the state assembly is. When how much of their paycheck goes to state taxes and, their children in public schools and policy creation around that. It's a big deal. So I understand, how that person feels. And by the way, they're always welcome to reach out to any campaigns early in the cycle and say, you can go ahead and take me off your mailing list. And that's something that, we certainly do. We take people off all the time. If that's, they're doing their own research, we applaud them for that. I want to go back to campaign finance reform, though. We have a lot of work to do. There's some low-hanging fruit out. That there are cities in this state and school districts and so forth that have no campaign finance limits. Stop and think about that for a second. You could write a check for $500,000 to somebody running for mayor. You think they're going to be accountable to you after you write a check for $500,000? So we have, some very wild West laws when it comes to that. But I really think that we need to be able to have someday publicly financed campaigns, really change the incentives by which candidates are operating, and change the game.
I would support so much of that. And here in Los Angeles, we're taking on a model from Seattle. It's called Democracy Dollars. We also have campaign finance here in LA. We have you can get up to $150,000 support for your campaign when you run for city council here. But now we're trying to push for something a little different. We'll allow people to have $100 and they can invest it on any campaign that they want.
Oh, wow.
And this is something that is happening already in Seattle. So hopefully you can look into it when you get elected. I want to bring a question that somebody's asking, a little different than the conversation that we were having, but I'm curious about reparations. And, it's interesting to see, at least in Los Angeles, the African-American, the Black community has decreased tremendously. There is only about 20% of African Americans in the electorate here. They have moved out of LA because it's too expensive. It's not what they want. And how do you feel about reparations?
So
I'm not familiar with the governor, but in general, I know that there is a big movement around reparations for Black folks in the States.
first of all, it's incredibly important that we're talking about it. Why? Well, when people talk about the issue of reparations, the notion is that it should center around slavery and the injustices of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And they should. But really, one of the things that's happened with the African American community since slavery is the lack of access to credit. Now, the one thing that this government does is it subsidizes people's ability to buy homes. The ability to, does that with tax incentives. You're able to write off your ability, the interest that you have to pay, and that's a huge subsidy that the government is providing. Unfortunately, for the African American community, they've had no access to credit until very recently.
Loans.
And there's a wonderful professor at UC Irvine named Mirza Baradaran who wrote 2 books on this topic, actually, about the racism and income inequality and access to credit for the African American communities, and the creation of Black banks, as a matter of fact, as a response to that. And the scary thing, Aura, is that this wasn't slavery in the mid 1800s, and prior to that, this is up until just a couple decades ago. And so, when you're talking about familial wealth and generational wealth, the African American community has been disproportionately discriminated against in financial markets. And we have to do something about that to rectify that. And so I'm open to, all ideas associated with that, because we find ourselves in a horrible, horrible hole where, that wealth is not passed on from generation to generation. The vast, vast majority of African Americans in the state, in country, are not homeowners and landowners, and there's a problem with that. So
Absolutely.
I want to do some, yeah.
Well, thank you. I think this is the end. We're ending our conversation, and I want to maybe give you an opportunity to share with us what's like the most, maybe an anecdote, or what is the most exciting part for you about running for office? What is the part that you love? Or maybe you can share a story with us about, what do you love about running?
The best part about running for office is it's the most incredible learning odyssey that you will ever have. Because if you're approaching the job the right way, you empathize with every person that you're talking to, and especially when they disagree with you. Other than being a dad, I've never learned so much about anything. And that's because I try every time, including with you, Aura, to see life through their lens, and to humble myself. And that exercise is a gift. It really is. If you love to learn, running for office, there's no better way to learn, I learned about issues that I never really thought about, where I stand on certain things, and to establish a public position on them. I didn't know where I stood on communism or on animal rights, things like that. And it really, forces you to crystallize, think about issues that, because not all of us think about the exact same issues with the same levels of intensity. And so it's a blessing. It really is, the ability to learn this much and from so many interesting people. And it's inspiring to be around people like you, to see that the work that you're doing, to see that the work that others are doing and other candidates are doing. And it gives energy. It really does. It creates energy. And that's so cool. So I feel really lucky to be have this opportunity to do this, and win or lose, it's been an incredible journey.
Thank you so much for running, and thank you so much for putting yourself out there as someone that really understands how hard it is to run. I want to commend you for doing that. It's a very unique, kind of experience in life, and I agree with you. It can be so rewarding, even though it's so hard while you in it. And I agree with you. It's also so lonely, even though you're around so many people. I remember just being like, oh my God, I kept talking about the campaign. People are like, my friends are gonna divorce me because like it's just I can't stop talking about the doors that I knock and how many calls we made. So I totally
Nothing,
get it.
nothing worse than a friend divorce. We don't want that.
Yeah, totally. If people want to support you, how do they get in touch with you, and what are some of the things that you need support with right now?
Would love help in any which way possible. They can go on to joshlowenthal.com, and from there they can reach out to us, sign up. This race is going to go all the way to the fall, Aura. There's no 50% threshold like there is in municipal races. And so the top two from this race will go on. I feel very confident that we'll be in the top two. I hope to be first place, actually, after Tuesday. And so we need volunteers, we need warriors, we need people in the community, we need people out there on social media, we need contributions, and we need your ideas. We really do. It's Aura, you and I became friends digitally, right? We met each other in the great internet, and we've become friends, and tremendous mutual respect for the work that each other's doing. And so I hope others can connect to us the same way, and we'll take the work all the way.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are watching, if you want to learn more about Josh, it's Josh Lowenthal. It's also here in the screen. You can see it here in the bottom, and also on Instagram. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know like an hour to be away from the campaign is kind of like a century, in my opinion. So I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Aura. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, very soon we'll have you back.
Okay, great.
All right, bye. All right, guys, that was Josh Lowenthal. Please be sure to visit him, visit his website, ask him questions, bring your ideas. Now we know more or less what he stands for and what he wants to do. I love this conversation today. As you know, the conversation doesn't end here. We continue the conversation online, so feel free to keep posting in the comments. And please stay engaged and stay involved. And don't forget, June 7th, last day of elections. Have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye.